Hello, this is the Expert Sleeper's Disting. The Disting is a 16-in-1 multifunction Eurorack module, which, depending on the state of the knob at the top, can do any one of 16 different things. So depending on the mode that you have it in, it's a precision adder for doing sexy voltage, pitch, shifting and addition and subtraction. It's a 4-quadrant multiplier, aka a VCA, or a ring modulator depending on the speed of the signals that are going into it. It's a full wave rectifier, which is a bit like a gentle wave folder based on LFOs and can be used to turn a bipolar signal into a unidirectional one. It's a minimum maximum module, which lets you slice the top and bottom from input waveforms and is good for shaping LFOs. It's a linear to exponential and vice versa voltage converter, which lets you integrate your Korg MS-20 or Yamaha CS keyboards to modular and in reverse as well. It's a pitch quantizer with 25 user-selectable scales, including chromatic mode. It's a comparator, which lets you create gates from a voltage source. It's a dual wave shaper, which can be used to bend LFOs and VCOs into new shapes and can be used to turn a triangle wave into a sine wave. It's a sample and hold generator for creating random voltages, and in the same mode is also a white noise generator. It's a slew rate limiter, which is good for adding glide to voltages. It's a pitch and envelope tracker, allowing you to take an audio signal and derive a 1 volt per octave pitch and also an envelope from it. It's a clockable delay and echo unit with a built-in mixed output. It's a through-zero LFO with wave shaping. It's a clockable LFO with multiplication and division and wave shaping. And it's also a VCO with linear FM, and also a VCO with saw triangle wave shaping and pulse outputs. And as well as that stingy selection of functions, it can also potentially have more added to it, since inside there is a little PIC controller, so clever people who understand programming can add functionality to the Disting and share it with other users later. The top knob here, S, is used to select the mode that the Disting is currently in. The one underneath, which is the Z control, is used as a kind of modifier and has different functions depending on the mode that it's in. Underneath it, there is also a Z socket, which is used to put voltages in to control this function. Beneath that, we have two inputs, which are X and Y, and we have two outputs, A and B. It probably hasn't escaped your attention that the Disting has these crazy bicolor LED sockets on it. These are extremely cool and are showing the voltage outputs from the various sockets. And if you put a voltage into the socket, showing whether it's positive or negative. This is extremely cool for understanding what voltages are coming out and what are going in, and I would like it very much if all modular synth manufacturers could now put these colourful sockets onto their modules, and therefore my modular would look like a Christmas tree. So let's go through the modes and try and do something cool with each one. So this is mode 1A, the precision adder mode. In this mode we can add and subtract voltages, which is useful for octave shifting basically. So here I have a Metropolis with a gate controlling the gate of an Atlantis, and if I shift the Z knob, we can basically move Atlantis through its entire range. But if I stick a random voltage into Z, that voltage will control the shifting for me, and I can offset it. And what we can also do is add in the actual sequence of Metropolis. And in this way, we can have cool octave shifted patterns. And then we also have a Y input, which lets us put another voltage in. One extremely cool thing here, you'll note that the B output and the A output differ from each other. A is X plus Y plus the offset amount, and the B output is X minus Y minus the offset output. And what happens is that if you take two oscillators, in this case, I'm using the second Atlantis oscillator, that's it there. offset and changed in different ways, but musically related. Very cool. You can also use the precision adder mode at audio rates, which does interesting things. This is mode 1B, the 4-quadrant multiplier, aka a ring modulator, and depending on what signals you put in it. At the moment I have 2 sine waves coming from a Korgasmatron, which are basically being multiplied against each other, so in this mode it is a ring mod. If you put a slower control voltage into here, it will act like a VCA. But for this occasion, let's play with the ring mod. You can get some really awesome tones. Ace. This is mode 1C, the full wave rectifier. So you can see the full wave rectifier takes a bidirectional signal and makes it unidirectional. When you start to introduce another voltage, in this case a sine wave running at audio rate, it starts to do all kinds of weird things. When you find the right voltages in combination, it starts to do some cool things. Yeah, man. Okay, this is mode 1D, which is the minimum maximum mode. I have the output A going to the IntelliGel microscale quantizer, and the output B controlling the octave shift on the quantizer. What I'm going to do now is take the output of a random looping sequencer Turing machine into Y, and I'm going to put the output of a cycle box, IntelliGel cycle box, into X. So it's going to be alternating the sources depending on how high the voltage is. So in this way we can put in 2 LFOs and get a kind of new LFO out of them. And because I've got it going through a quantizer, the whole thing sounds kind of musical, like a melody. I've picked out the scale. If we adjust the Z control, this causes the minimum maximum to freeze at a certain voltage point. We can do this manually, but obviously we can stick a voltage into here. And what I'll do is use the gate output from an IntelliGel Metropolis, which is what's also clocking the Turing machine. Now with the voltages properly set up, when Disting receives the right height gate, it'll freeze the minimum maximum calculation. And in this way we can kind of sample the melody between both modulation sources. And then because I've got a Metropolis, I can play with gates. It's a good gate sequencer. If you watch the light, you can see what Metropolis is putting out. Varying modes on the Metropolis. This is Disting Mode 2A, which is the linear to exponential voltage converter, and vice versa. And in this instance, we have the trusty Korg MS-20, which conforms to the Hertz to voltage standard. It means, unfortunately, if we take the keyboard CV out and stick it into an 1 volt per octave oscillator, hear the MS-20 tracking, but we can hear the cycle box flying off into infinity as you get near the top. Different voltage scaling standards. So with this properly set up, and it just takes a minute basically, with it connected to the right input, you can adjust the scaling with the Z knob. And then if we plug the converted output into the cycle box, it works. This is mode 2B, the pitch quantizer. Here we can take a voltage, in this case the output of a maths, and basically turn it into a melody. We have a bunch of scales built in, which you can adjust with a Z or a voltage. And what's cool here is it derives a gate when it makes a change. So we can use that gate to drive a envelope generator. So I just get that envelope generator to act on our signal. You get pretty little melodies just from a rising and falling form. And we can speed that. Nice. If we change the amount of voltage going in, it will shorten our octave. It's cool. You can start to make little melodies with just basic functions rather than a sequencer. We're sort of building a sequencer. So, there's other things we can quantize, namely, let's quantize the Turing machine, which is a random voltage generator, and this thing will spit out random voltages, which we can loop. But obviously, if you've got a quantizer, what's really nice is you can then constrain that randomness to fit within a scale, so it's not so random anymore. So if I clock this from here, we're now hearing the randomness, which I've just looped, but the randomness being constrained to scales by the quantizer function, and a gate being generated. sending more voltage in, which will throw the quantizer higher. And then obviously we can, because it's the Turing machine, dial in some randomness. Not so random anymore. Let's see what happens when we use the very pitch itself to alter its tuning. Weird things. Nice. Cool. This is mode 2C, the comparator. The comparator, in this case, is taking a triangle LFO from the PEG. Ooh. A triangle LFO from the PEG, and it goes into the X input and it derives a gate from it based on a voltage that you set here. So what you're hearing is the Atlantis being driven, the gate being advanced by the comparator gate that's been created using the LFO. So the LFO is kind of driving the sequence. And then I'm using B, which is the inverted gate output, to advance the Turing machine, which is going through a quantizer. So you get this kind of syncopated thing. Cool. This is mode 2D, the dual wave shaper. Here we have a sine wave from the Korgasmatron, and we can shape it. The other part of the wave shaper is a triangle to sine converter. Here is a triangle from the cycle box, and if we just give it a little tug, you turn it into a sine. And kind of fold it in a nice way as well, bit of distortion. This is set up with a sine wave from the Korgasmatron being folded and the fold amount being controlled by the Turing machine. Sequenced by Metropolis. This is mode 3A, sample and hold. Here we can stick a voltage into X, and when we stick a voltage into Y above a certain voltage, it grabs X and holds it, samples and holds. They're good for making random noises. Here we have it driving a cycle box. With the Z control, we can control the slew, the sort of glide between the samples and holds. And then out of output B, we get noise, which I've got going into the feedback of the Spring Reverb. I call this tune Sample and Hold Beach. This is mode 3B, the slew rate limiter. A slew limiter creates slides between voltages, basically. And there's two modes here, a linear and logarithmic slide. You can control the amount of slide with Z. I'm using the Z8000 here to create a sequence, and then I'm using voltage, one of the rows, to apply slew limiting. We start to get a slide. Take it away, do it manually. Cool. This is mode 3C, which is the pitch and envelope follower. This is a little tricky to set up for what I'm going to do, which is using it on human voice. I'll show it's a very good example of it being used on clarinet, I believe, and it tracks very well, and it will track a sine wave very reliably, but I'm using the Dope for A119, and I was advised, and it's very good advice, use a bandpass filter, take out any extraneous low end and any high end, because the tracking is quite, it's pretty erratic if you don't do that. If you do that though, it does track pretty well, and basically it will give you a pitch out, and it will give you an envelope follow out, and you have the Z control to control a sort of slew rate limiter on the envelope, sort of smooth that out. So trusty dynamic microphone, there it is, and if I attempt to sing, bear with me. Bit wavery. Me, that is. I can't hit those notes. Anyway, it's good. You definitely need the bandpass filter though. The Korgasmatron's great for it. This is mode 3D, the clockable echo. Here we have the ability to put a audio signal in and get a delay out of it. And the delay is clocked with a clock, and in this case I've got a Metropolis and Atlantis sequence, which the clock from Metropolis is being divided and then sent into this. And what's cool here is you have two outputs, one which is the mixed output, and you have the B output, which is just the delay. But with the mixed output you can apply it, and it gets blended in. You don't need to use, another mixer and a VCA to make it all work. And it's obviously all nicely in time. Nice. This is disting mode 4A, the through zero LFO. In this mode we have a free running LFO, and we can tap the two outputs A and B for different wave shapes. So if we tap A, we get this kind of wave-shaped output, which can go from saw to sine to triangle, depending on a voltage, which we need to stick into Y. You hear that? And then we also have another output, B. If I stick a voltage into B, now tap it, it's controlling our piston Honda here. And if we wave shape, it changes the duty cycle of the pulse. If we stick a LFO into X, it's a kind of frequency control. It does all kinds of interesting things. Because it's through zero, it kind of folds over when it gets to the top of the input voltage. So you get interesting shapes. Cool. This is mode 4B. This is the clocked LFO. And here I've got the 808 sequence is clock running into the X input, which is supplying the time. And then we're going to use the Disting's LFO to modulate a BBD, which is going to cause all kinds of interesting things to happen. This is the BBD. No modulation, applied. And then with modulation, You can see it here. We can adjust the timing. It's all synced. Controlling the amount being sent. Okay, so no modulation now. Let's move it to the B output, which is the sort of pulses. And we have a wave shaper, which I'm using a maths here into Y, so I can shape the pulse. I can adjust the duty cycle of the pulse. We could do the same thing with the A output, changes the slope of the LFO. Pretty cool. This is disting mode 4C of VCO with linear FM. Here we've got a sequence from the Metropolis coming into X. We have a Z control, which is a tune control, which goes plus and minus half a volt. We have two outputs, A, which is a sine wave, and B, which is a nice saw. We also have input Y, which is linear FM. So if I take a audio rate sine wave from the Gorgasmatron, this is mode 4D, the VCO, this time with wave shaping. So we have very similar controls to before, but instead of a linear FM input, the Y input allows us to wave shape and effectively adjust PWM. So listening to the A output at the moment, if we change the wave, you'll hear it go from sine to triangle and to a saw. You can obviously do that with the LFO. And then if we listen to the B output, we go from a square X. And blend the waveforms with a mixer. And obviously, it's fun to use LFO to control that, so let's do that. Ace.